for young people, and you guys will be meeting them very shortly. I'm just going to say from now, yeah, you might need your notebook, you might need your pen and paper, because the gems that are going to come from tonight, I would be writing these down. If you've got hopes and dreams on what you want to do, you've got people on this call right now who are in the same boat and have done something about that, and that is amazing to hear from. And so, yeah, questions are very, very welcome to all the panelists that we have got, yeah, tonight. So also joining me are influencers and social activists. We've got the one and only Gina Martin on the call tonight, and the real Ben Hurst on the socials. Ben Hurst is going to be badding up this conversation, a real good guy, and together we're going to be taking questions and just chopping up what does it mean to have hope in 2020. And together with the Youth Advisory Group, let me tell you something small about this group here. So this group has come together from all the different companies and organizations who have pulled together this event, and you're going to hear from them straight. Young people talking to other young people about having hope in 2020. Now, we know this year has been wild already, and so who better to chop it up with than people who are inspiring others to find hope in a very, very heavy year. And we're going to have key discussions all around hope, personal challenges, barriers. Because of the pandemic, because of lockdown, we've all been living a very, very similar experience, as well as giving advice to young people today. Plus, there'll be a chance at the end of this session to ask your questions. Yes, the Q&A is going to go off, and that's why I'm saying use the hashtag, man. You want to get your questions in quick, because as soon as 8:15 comes and it opens, the questions I'm sure are going to come through. So get your questions in from early. Before we start, I know what you're thinking, housewives, how do I get my questions in? How do I get my voice heard? Let me run you through some of the ground rules of how all of this works. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you will see two functions, one of them being raise your hand. So throughout this event, you will have the opportunity to make your own comments or ask questions to the panelists. And in order to conduct this in a very fair way and to make sure we hear everyone who's involved, we would love for you to indicate that you would like to speak by clicking the raise your hand function. And then I'll call your name and unmute you, and you can, yeah, have the floor and share your question. But though, if you prefer not to speak, that's absolutely fine. You can use the Q&A function. So if you don't want to speak and you just want to write your question in, use that function. We'll pick it up and we'll hand it over to the panelists as well. So without further ado, I think it's time to meet the people behind this event, and I'm very honored. You know, the stars of the show are the YAG, man. I just love the fact that young people are making this event happen tonight. And so to introduce to you, I want to introduce some of the most amazing people that we've got, and giving thanks for putting together an amazing event. And it'd be lovely to get to know some of them, but also a little bit about the context and the backdrop behind Hope 2020, the campaign this year. So starting with Abba from the Damilola Taylor Trust, I want to hear from you, Abba, just a little bit about the campaign and also about you. So who are you and what do you do?
Hi guys, an absolute pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Swarzy, for that intro. Brilliant stuff. My name is Abba, as Swarzy said, and I'm 25 years old. I graduated from Plymouth in 2017 with a degree in business economics. And then went on to work for a few automotive companies. But during that time, I got involved in an organization called 2020 Change, which some of you may have heard of. Fantastic organization with a wonderful, amazing person called Duro Oye, who set up that organization. I was sort of his understudy working alongside him, and I had the opportunity to engage with him in several projects across different communities, and that really opened my eyes into seeing how desperate some people's situations are, but also seeing the need for change and the need for just progression amongst some communities that we have. And so through that, actually, I then got involved with the Damilola Taylor Trust, which I was recommended again by Duro. I sort of applied, got in, and we were working on some great projects until, unfortunately, lockdown hit, COVID hit, the pandemic hit, and then obviously a lot of things stopped in its tracks. However, this wonderful campaign then arose, and we weren't going to be beat down by the fact that, you know, we were in a lockdown. We weren't going to be beat down by the fact that obviously things were challenging in that regards. And as you know, for some of you or all of you guys do know, this is the 20th anniversary of the tragic death of Damilola Taylor, who sadly, you know, was murdered in unfortunate circumstances. But within that, obviously, this campaign and for the DTT, what we wanted to do effectively was to make a good news story out of it. Damilola Taylor, you know, before he passed away, spoke about wrote about his desires to bring change. Spoke about his hopes for the future. And what we want to do, through this campaign is to help other people, young people, a range of individuals from all different backgrounds to come into that same mindset and where they can come away from, tragedy, come away from fears, come away from just all the negative things that we've seen happening prior to this year and this year as well, into something more positive and into looking into how they can fulfill their potential. And so within within the Damilola Taylor Trust, this is sort of what we've sort of come up with, and partnering with a range of organizations, Swarzy fantastically said, all around the country to ensure that we are able to cover as many people as possible and no one is left out, essentially. I hope that answers the question, Swarzy.
Yeah, what you basically said is like we're the Avengers. So you've just you guys have all just come together to pull together the event. And before I move on to the girls on the court, I just wanted to ask, what does it mean for yourself, for the Damilola Taylor Trust, to have today the first event of many to come? It's the first national event. Yeah, today must mean a lot to you guys.
Absolutely does. Absolutely does. I think behind the scenes, even Damilola's father, Richard Taylor, had been doing a lot of work. He'd been meeting a lot of people, and I've had a privilege of meeting myself, and he's so honored. He's so pleased that a lot of people can come together and celebrate, but also ensure that the legacy of Damilola Taylor lives on, and it's something that we are able to actually look upon as a positive as well. I think today really marks something of a change, and I think it can be used as a hallmark, it can be used as a benchmark and a platform for young people, but also the organizations that are involved with young people, to really come together. I think this really, this hope brings together togetherness. It brings together just that collaboration. And I think after just a challenging year that we've all had, with COVID, but with many other things as well, I think it's such a positive and such a great story. And I know even with Richard and his family as well, I'm more than pleased. I'm more than happy that this is something that something that will live on to the future, and not just for today as well.
You mentioned the keyword early. What are we? We're 11 minutes in and we're talking legacy already. So Ava, I've got to come back to you, man. We need part 2 of tonight as well. This is, going to be a really, really encouraging and inspirational event. So let me jump over next to Kiana. I want to talk about, first of all, your plush background, sis. You're really doing velour curtain. I'm loving the, you think I didn't clock? I got you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Let us know, who are you and what do you do?
Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in tonight. I'm Kiana Leader, I'm 22 and I'm based in Leeds. I work in a fantastic charity called Getaway Girls that's all about empowering young women and girls. And my role within that is to coordinate the girls' voices to make Leeds the first women-friendly city in the UK. So we've been working on campaigns, ensuring the girls' voices are heard and trying to make Leeds the best city that it can be. I'm also part of the young people in the lead team with the National Lottery Community Fund, and we're all about youth voice. All we want to do is make youth voice a prominent part of all the different work that we've done. It's all about how to attract and retain young talent. We've made PowerPoint spreadsheets, it's been a fantastic experience. But for me, hope is so important because it's all about the future, especially for young people. They need to see the opportunities that are out there, that they can strive for more. So this is so important to me. And that's why I was really keen to get involved, because young people are the future and they need hope.
Amazing. We're getting into it, sis. We're about to chop it up. Just to let guys know, if you've just joined, welcome. We've got tonight broken up into sections, and one of them will be about hope. And so please get involved. We really, really, as Kiana just said, want to hear your voices. Young voices matter. And so that's really what it's about as well. So thank you so much. We're coming back to you. We're coming back. And Sabrina, I want to bring Sabrina into the conversation. So let us know, sis, who are you? What do you do? And given that the Youth Advisory Group has so many collectives of different organizations, who are you representing tonight as well?
Okay, so I'm Sabrina Jones and I'm representing UK Youth tonight. So I'm on their advisory board, and also during June, after the whole George Floyd thing, I helped UK Youth quite a lot of the Young and Black campaign, because they recognise that a lot of organisations, but young people they had been affected by what happened to George Floyd, but nobody really knew how to process it or what could be done. So UK Youth set up the Young Black campaign. It was a way for young Black people to share their experiences of what it's like being young and Black. And I think personally for me, that's really important, because I feel like I didn't really have a safe space to ever discuss what it is like being Black in England and experiences that I may have encountered throughout my life. And I think it's really important, not for those who just share their stories, but also for those who listen to the stories, because I think that's the only way we can learn, if we listen to those who've been affected by an issue. So that's my involvement with UK Youth. But my day-to-day life, so I founded a social enterprise 2 years ago called Say It With Your Chest, and that works with young people who are at risk of being excluded from school. On a personal level, I'm just really passionate about using my voice and speaking about things which I care about, and I think it's important that other young people do as well. And I think sometimes young people feel like, oh, I'm young, or what do I know? But actually it doesn't matter, everyone starts off somewhere. And the main reason why I got involved with the Hope 2020 campaign is because I remember when Damiola Taylor was killed. I was really young at the time, but I remember, and when I saw this as an opportunity for me to get involved, I think it was really important that I did so, because I think the worst thing you can do in any scenario is to do nothing. And I think if there's an opportunity in life for you to help, whether that's getting involved in a campaign or maybe attending an event to educate yourselves, I think it's important you do take those opportunities.
Yeah, and I love that name. Say it with your chest. If there was going to be a banner, do you know what I mean, for young people and what we want to say, yeah, we're going to be saying it with our chest.
Yes.
So thank you so, and shout goes out to UK Youth as well. You guys do an incredible job of raising the volume of young voices. And so, yeah, Sabrina, it's an absolute joy to have you locked in tonight. To the Youth Advisory Group, we are so excited to have you. We're going to come back to you real soon. And next up, I want to introduce to you another two legends that we have the joy and the pleasure of chopping it up with tonight. We have got the one, the only. I need some carnival music, or I need some like sound system or something, but yeah, okay, Gina's in the house. We've got Gina Martin playing, and we've got Ben Hurst as well. The two legends, the social influencers here tonight.
Carnival music.
Ready.
Hello.
Hiya. Oh, it's so good to have you guys. Let me start with Gina first. Yes, sis, for those who don't know you, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm a grassroots activist, or like grassroots campaigner, and I'm most well known for stuff to do with gender equality. So I'm most well known for bringing in the Voyeurism Act, which was the upskirting law that came into effect in April last year. I've run like a 2-year campaign. We say with the government, but it was basically against the government, to change the law and to bring in change the Sexual Offences Act 2003 after I was upskirted at a festival and nothing could be done about it. But I work on lots of other stuff. I'm working on Instagram policy recently, and I'm also a writer and a broadcaster and a speaker, and I'm dead excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your time. I know she won't ever do it, innit, Ben, because everyone tries to downplay the bio. But just so that people have context, yeah, Gina really was out here lobbying, fighting for this law to be changed, not just to benefit her, but so many other young girls who now have somewhere to go when they're like, yeah, this happened to me. And because of the change that Gina has made, I now have a voice to bring my case forward. And so, yeah, let me say, because I know Gina will be like, but yeah, the change that you have done and the example that you have shown, especially for other young girls to come up and be like, oh, how do I do that? You actually have an example of what that looks like, and then to succeed and do it. So we are very humbled and very glad to have you on the call tonight, Gina. So thank you.
Thanks, Swaz.
Let me jump over to the man himself, my guy who I love very much. The one and only is Ben Hurst in the house. So Ben, who are you and what do you do?
Obviously, man's out here. No, this is so fun. Do you know that? This is like just being on a call with all my friends. This is such a weird experience. It's really surreal. Hello, everyone who's watching. My name is Ben. I am the head of facilitation and training at an organization called the Good Lad Initiative. Good Lad is an organization that works in schools and universities and corporates with men and boys, engaging them in gender equality conversations, particularly on the topic of masculinities. I'm also a speaker, an activist. I'm currently writing a book in inverted. Ask me if I've started writing the book. The answer
Have you started writing the book?
No, I haven't. But I am meant to be writing a book. Yeah, I also do a bunch of other stuff as with everybody else. And I'm really excited to be here today. This is like an amazing opportunity and an amazing event like that's been organized by young people. I wish I did stuff like this when I was a young people. That would have been great.
You are a young people.
Yeah,
so-
no. 30, it's not so young.
Gina and Ben are on the conversation, guys. If you've got questions for these guys, like, they are in the realm of making change. They are talking to people and really laying foundations all over the place. And so they've got great advice. If you've got questions about, yeah, how do I take this passion of mine and move it forward, yeah, get these questions in. Use the hashtag, use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen as well. Okay, yeah, let me keep Ben and Gina on the screen and just give you a little bit about a context for today. So as happy as we are to be celebrating Damilola Taylor's birthday today, it would have been his birthday today. Of course, we know that he was tragically murdered, and 2020 marks the 20th anniversary of his death. And before he died, he spoke of his dreams. He wrote about his dreams of being a doctor, and even that, to think in a pandemic, that holds so much weight, to know that those on the front line of this pandemic have tragically lost their lives and put in hours in and sacrificed so much. And then to have Damilola talk about his dream and his hope of being a doctor, it says so much about what young people can do. And tragically, his life was cut short. And so in memory of him, this today is one of the first events that's going to become an annual event. And so who better to hear from, yes, the likes of Gina and Ben, and also the youth advisory group as well. So I want to welcome back onto the screen the wonderful Kiana to kick off this discussion all about hopes and ambitions. Hopes and ambitions. Hope is the theme of tonight, the theme going forward. And so if Kiana, if you're on, yes, you're there, sis. Okay, you already started it off, to be honest, in your intro. You already started talking about hope. So I'd love for you to kick off this first section of the conversation and really answer and open up with, what does hope mean to you?
Well, for me, hope means opportunity. Like, it's to see more, that there's more in the world, and to understand you can actually get more. Because I think sometimes it's easier for like us to hope and be like, oh, that's what it is. But hope is actually having the passion to help like push through it, and like, yes, I can do this, and seeing other people excel and wanting that for everyone. Like, that's hope. Like, we need the future to be better than what it is now.
And you, just before I go over to Ben and Gina, you spoke about, you know, really leading the way for girls' voices. And it's amazing to then have Gina on the call. So I would love to ask this question over to Gina as well. But where did your passion start from that? Because I'm sure, well, we have loads of young people locked in tonight. We've got loads of people tuned in from all over. And so for your story, where did it begin, and how did those first steps happen?
For me, my story began with, I've got a really big passion for politics, and I was just seeing like there were so many barriers, that extra barriers I felt I was facing, like being a young woman, being Black, and like especially like the gender inequalities that were happening, the opportunities that I saw other people getting, that I was like, well, we're qualified the same, like why is this happening? So I've just got so much passion that these girls and young women, they need to know that their voices can be heard, that they can facilitate change, because that's the only way we're going to make changes, if we make noise. So I need these girls to feel empowered and that they can do it all.
Amazing. I'm gonna jump in with that about making noise. Let me jump over to Gina. Gina, what does that mean to you? What does it mean to make noise?
Oh man, that I feel like that's what being an activist is. I always joke that campaigning and activism is like, yeah, it's strategic and it's planned, but it's just agitating a lot. Like, my job is basically just to create difficulty for people, and then there's an unsustainable environment, and then I like take advantage of it. And that's kind of what it is. And it's just using your voice, and like making noise is so important, and using your voice is so important. And big up Leeds, Kiana, because that's my uni city. I love Leeds. But you're right about politics as well. As like, that environment is a very, very difficult environment for young women. Even for me as a white woman going in there, I found it incredibly intimidating. And so you have to use your voice, and you have to speak up and make noise, because no one's going to give you permission to do that in those environments ever.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And for yourself, Ben, yeah, just before I go back to Kiana for her to ask the questions to you guys, what does it mean to make noise, especially in your context and the work that you do? What does it mean to make noise?
You know what? That's a tough question. I guess a lot of it is to do with what Gina's already said, which is just winding people up, which is the annoying way of saying being an agitator. And then I think there's another part of it, which is creating space for other people to make noise. Do you know what I mean? I think there's this like allure attached to activism, which is like, you become the person in the spotlight, and so much of activism is not like that at all. So much of it is just turning up, waking up, at like 5 a.m. in the morning, going to where you need to be and sitting down in a room with a bunch of people and listening to what they have to say, and finding ways to amplify those voices. So I think it's about making noise, but in a very, very specific way for me, which is like hearing what other people say and then trying to broadcast that to the world, right? Trying to get as many people to hear those messages as possible.
Yeah. Kiana, you're nodding, sis. So let me hand back over to you. Yeah, I just wondered if you had any questions that you'd like to kick off the conversation with.
Yeah, I know I touched on it, but I'd like to hear from you guys. What does hope mean to you?
Oh, it's a big question. It's a great question, though. I feel like hope, you have to have hope with this work, like especially with this work, because you get a lot of fatigue in campaigning and activism. Like Ben said, it's all the macro little decisions you're making, and like all the admin you're doing, and all the just emotional effort that goes into it, but also the physical effort. And like I remember during the campaign, I would be like up till 6 a.m. just going through petition comments, trying to find stories, and then like spending 6 hours trying to find one person's email, and like all of this work that is such small decision that adds up to this big change. You get really fatigued with this work often, so you have to have that hope. That's what keeps you going. It's exactly what you said. It's the idea that things can be better, and things can always be better, no matter what anyone tells you. That they're lying to you if they say they can't, because that's the only thing that's ever changed anything, is regular people being like, actually, I'm not okay with these crumbs. I'd like this. I'd like more. We should have more for these people. But for me, like hope is a bit of a practice. Like I'm a naturally hopeful person. I'm an optimist by nature, which makes I'm lucky to be because of my work. But I have to, hope is like something that I think you create, and like by what you do. So like when someone speaks out and does something, or like this event and like the Youth Advisory Board, like doing this work gives other people hope. It makes someone else go, oh yeah, I could do that. It's kind of like, it's something that you give and something that exponents, like it grows depending on what you do. So it's something that's a practice. Like I try to do things because I care about them, and I try to talk about them in a way that I'm really proud of and raise my voice about stuff, and hope that other people get hope from that and feel that they can do the same thing.
I'm like the opposite to you. I'm like a pessimist in real life. So like I think I appear to be optimistic, but usually I'm like, this is terrible. Yeah. And so hope to me is like really tough. Like it doesn't come naturally to me actually. And I think like I did a typical, like I grew up in church, and when you grow up in church, you learn like very specific ways of like speaking publicly about stuff. You always Google the definitions of words whenever anybody's going to ask you what it means. And the definition was pretty close to what resonates with me, right? Which is like an expectation or a desire. And I guess I would define hope for me as like a unrelenting belief in the possibility of something that's going to happen. But like I find it's usually believing that something is possible when everything else says that something's not possible. Do you know what I mean? Like when it's very clearly not going to happen, still turning up and being like, I think this is going to happen. And that's what hope looks like to me. It often feels like silly at the time. Like when I feel personally like when I'm hoping for something, I'm like, this is dumb, man, it's not going to happen. That's just my personality. But then to persevere with that feeling and like fight against the odds, like to push when doors are being closed, like to believe that something's going to happen even when it looks like it's not going to happen, is what hope feels like to me and what it looks like to me.
Yeah, that tattooed on my forehead for life.
Yeah. Hope.
She's already started. Just the bubble hat is
just hiding it a little bit.
Yeah, just hiding the top. And I just think I really value both of your answers, because you know, there'll be people on the calls that, yeah, I'm naturally an optimist. And then others will be like, oh, actually, I'm not. But the fact that you're both on the conversation proves that even if you are or you're not, there is space to grow, there's things to do. And there's others who have walked the path and been like, yeah, I know exactly what that feels like. And that's really encouraging as well. I've got a few questions for you, Kiana, but I just want to jump over back to Gina and then back to Ben and just ask, yeah, what are your hopes for the future? But I want to start with Gina, because given that you have now got a law in place, right, and what Ben was talking about, this is long, it looks like it will never happen, and then there's that day where it does happen and you think, wow, all of the perseverance, all of the enduring, all of those long nights, and even the negative things that I'll just give up, Gina, like, do you know what I mean, it ain't gonna happen, and then it happens. Does your perspective of hope change now that you have seen the outcome you were so faithful to do? So yeah, what's your hopes for the future, but also does your perspective of hope change now that you've been able to win. You're a winner, so yeah.
Thanks, mate. I'm going to answer the second one first because it immediately comes to my head. But like, yeah, I think the day my fight was very, very specific. And when we talk about activism, like the thing that I did is not often what activism looks and feels like, right? And like the public perception of what I did is also not in any way what it looked or felt like to do what I did. It wasn't me in a pink suit being like, I'm going to take you on. It's like Boris Johnson. Actually, it was Theresa May at the time. But, you know, it was like me and lots of other people, me and my lawyer, but then me and lots of people I don't even know around the world, like getting angry about a common issue. And then me creating like lots and lots of tiny movements, and Ryan, my lawyer, creating lots of tiny movements in politics and a whole strategy. And so when that day came, when it did happen, which, you know it's going to come in politics because there's such a process, you know, it's 12 stages to a bill, and you're like, okay, well, we're at 4 and it's been 75 years. So, you know, you get to stage 12 and they sign it off, and it's just, it was just relief for me because I'd kept this hope going for so long when members of my own family, not my own immediate family, but extended members of my family had been like, who does she think, like literally said, well, who does she think she is doing that? Like my own family, you know, every politician said, no, I couldn't do it. I was like, can I? And like kept wanting to quit because it was really hard. But it's exactly what Ben says, that perseverance of the belief that like, even when things are, everything's telling you not, that's how things change when you decide not to listen to that and to keep going. Yeah. And having done that, I've always tried to articulate this, but it sounds, I guess, self-serving, and I don't know how to articulate it another way, but like, I do feel different about the ability for change to happen because I view myself as, and before that, with no political or legal experience and not very academic in school and really struggle, I viewed myself as someone who could absolutely never do anything like that. So when I was able to do that, it made me go, oh, well, things are possible then, even though it was me, you know? And the other hope for the future, I think I just really want to be able to ease some of the peaks and troughs in the inequalities we're dealing with. My obviously specialty is in like gender inequality, and I want to make that I want to be a voice that can help make that a really inclusive space. We have a lot of issues with inclusivity in terms of like LGBTQI plus communities and stuff in feminism and like in the gender equality space. So I just want to see those peaks and troughs shorten, like in my lifetime in some way. And I'm lucky to see so many amazing people doing the work, and you do see every day the wins, even though it's hard. So I'm just hoping we can shorten those peaks and troughs just a little bit.
Yeah. Great answer, sis. Thank you so much. And actually, that even for you, Ben, actually, what you're saying in terms of like, you have to show up. You actually have to do the hard work, and the badge of activism can feel so great for the IG bio, but when you actually need to get up at 9 a.m. and you're like, oh right, I actually need to do the work. But I wonder, because you are so you're loyal to the work that you do because you care about it. And I know that loads of people on this chat will be like, well, I don't care about this topic, but I care about this. And so is it worth putting all my eggs into this basket and fighting for that cause? Given that you've had those 9 a.m. starts and you work really hard, when you're able to see the small changes and the small tweaks, does that give you more hope to see the bigger things change? And yeah, what are those changes that you want to see in the future?
Man, do you know what? I wish there was like a nice, cleanly packaged answer I could give to this question. And I wish the answer was like, yeah, it's so motivating. But like the reality is it changes on like from day to day. And some days like you do an amazing piece of work and you see like people have light bulb moments. You might be talking to some kids and they're like, oh yeah, I do just realize just now that like the world is like sexist and racist and maybe we should change these things. Other days, like you get into like massive arguments on Zoom calls with people in banks in other countries who just are not like listening to what you're saying and want to argue weird stuff. And sometimes it's like really, really tiring. But I guess my aim, like my hope or my dream, and the majority of my hopes are like not really attached to my work, but I think my main hope for the kind of work that I do is that I will work myself out of a job. Like I hope that one day I will have done this work so well that like this issue won't be an issue anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like if it's like toxic masculinity, like I hope that I will have done such a good job of tackling that and raising conversations about it and helping people to like deconstruct their own versions of masculinity and reconstruct healthier versions of it, to the point where no one ever has to do that work ever again, and now we're just focusing on all of the other issues, and that would be dope, man. But my real hopes, if I'm being honest, are like just normal stuff. Like I was like a weird kid, so like I hope that one day I'll be involved in the creation of a cartoon, or like when I was a kid when I grew up I really wanted to be like a jeweler, or like it's just weird stuff that I'm like, oh, one day I'll do that. Like once this work is done, I'll be able to just do whatever I want to do with my life. And that's the hope. But while the work is still there to be done, it doesn't feel, I feel like it's one of those things like in the Matrix where like once you're aware of it, you can't switch off from it. And it feels like you're trapped in this like vortex of like doing stuff and trying to save the world and trying to help people, which sometimes is really amazing. Other times it's really tough. But I think the aim with it for me is definitely to not have to do that at some point, or to be able to at least pass something on to somebody else to be able to carry it into the future and make it easier for them to do that work.
Before I jump over to Kiana, someone in the chat is asking, what's your favorite cartoon, Ben? Could you shed light on your favorite?
Well, so that's a techie question, really, because are we talking about anime or are we talking about cartoons, like American cartoons? It's between, like, when I was growing up, it was Dexter's Lab, Powerpuff Girls, Johnny Bravo, like all the Cartoon Network hits, do you know what I mean? The real ones. Adventure Time is A1. One Piece is the greatest epic of our generation. If you don't know about that, educate yourself. Do you know what I mean? Do the work. I'm not here to do the work for you guys.
Definitely a Cartoon Network head in my bottom right corner there. Yeah, A1. Kiana, let me jump over to you, sis, and ask the same question about hope. What are your hopes for the future? And it's great to have you on the courses, because given that you are already doing things now, this is what I want to really focus on. There are so many young people, probably the same age, probably in your same city. Do you know what I mean? And that's like, yeah, I'm passionate about this and I want to get up and go. And so I'd love to know from you some of the small stories that you think, actually, this was a turning point. This was a small turning point, but it led to a big decision happening, or, you know, things were able to move because of the work that we started. And I know you're a voice for women and a voice for girls. So just in your context, what are the hopes that you have for the future?
I think my hopes for the future, they kind of resonate with like Ben's. Like, I want it that people are just able to easily access different opportunities, and these barriers out there. So I feel like people on the ground understand all the problems that are happening. They know the work, they believe in the work. But when you're dealing with people higher up, trying to make them understand can be so difficult, but they're the ones that usually have the power. So for them to be able to understand it, they can make the big changes, and then it filters down to the people that really get the work, and they just get the support to continue doing the good work they're already doing. So like, that's the hope that I would want.
Can I tease you out on that though? Yeah, because fam, I beg, like, this is actually where it crumbles down to. The people on the top sometimes don't understand the issues that others are bringing to their attention because there's a lack of empathy. And I think the minute you have empathy, even if you, or maybe sympathy, because you may not know someone else's struggle, you may have never walked a day in life in their shoes, but to understand and to feel, you know, we're talking about feeling hopeful. We're talking about feeling other people's experiences. And so for you to learn that so quickly and just to cut through the nonsense and being like, yeah, I understand what time it is, I get it. Do you have a story of how you was able to discern that? How did you get to that conclusion?
I think for me personally, it was, I've had some work experience in Parliament, and through that I kind of understood the disconnects. Like, they was talking about things that just, for me, I don't think they really understood, but people who I'm working with really understand these issues and they got it. And sometimes it's not a lack of like sympathy or empathy, they just don't have the connection with the people that they really need to be serving and understanding. And you see, like, that's where my passion to want to become an MP comes from. So I feel like more people with lived experience that might not fit the status quo need to be up in these top positions to really give this reaching hand down to the people that need it to bring everybody up. So I think for me, that experience, being around like decision makers that maybe haven't had young people in the room or females in the room or anything like that, like, we just need to be there.
Yeah, and be present. Yes, you're actually giving me bare inspo vibes, you know, like it's not hard, but it's so simple to do the things that you want to see done. And even if it is having Black women at the table, or having women full stop at the table, or those they're not small, but they're small in the sense of it's easy to do, right? You can invite the right people to have a different mindset, and obviously then you'll get a different outcome. I'm looking at the time and I'm saying, Mete, okay, we got to move on to the next group of conversation, but I've got to ask this final question to you guys. And it is, how have you got people in your core, people in your group, in your corner, whether it's a WhatsApp chat, whether it's a group, whatever it may be, but how have you got someone to believe in your hopes, and what difference does that make to have people with you? When we look at the greats, right, and the activists that will always come to mind, they never did things single file, they never did things alone, they would always do things in groups. And so my final question, let me jump in with Ben first actually. How have you got someone to believe in your hopes? Yeah, what does that group look like for you, and how important is it to have?
Yeah, man, a controversial answer. So I don't know if my role is to get people to believe in what I'm saying, right? Like, I feel like a big part of this is actually finding your tribe and finding people who, because it's naive of me to believe that I'm the only person that thinks a thing. There's always other people out there who are on the same wave, and the power comes in numbers, right? So the more people you can find who are on the same wave is the more convincing the message becomes. And I think when people see that kind of like what goes from like a small little wave into like a tidal wave of movement, they see that thing happening, people want to jump on board with that energy. And that to me is how people change. Like, I always work on this scale in my mind of like pre-contemplation to contemplation to intention to action. And I would always say, if you can move someone one step on that scale, you've done a good job, you've succeeded in that moment. So if somebody's never thought about something before and you're the person that makes them consider that, not necessarily you're the person that makes them become an activist, but you're the person that pushes them into like consideration. Or if they're somebody with like the best intentions and they're like, yeah, I'm on this, and you're the person that's like, well, let's do it then. That is how you move people into action. But for me, I don't ever spend my time like looking for people and trying to convince them to like believe what I believe in. It's more just, I do what I need to do. Like, I try and turn up and be there and do the work. And often when people see that thing happening, they want to jump on board with that. I don't know if either of you guys have a different answer or a similar answer, or what do you think?
Yeah, that's great.
I think that's amazing, because that's really helpful for me to hear. Even, you know, like these conversations we have, like we're sitting here and it's like we're going to be asked the questions, but I often like learn a lot having these conversations about myself, because my experience in activism was I was put in a position very publicly as someone that people should be learning from, when actually I was learning it all at the time I was doing it simultaneously. And so I spent a while having to unpick that and figure out that actually it's not, you know, and I don't think I ever really believed it, but you get put in a position and you think, God, well, I have this platform now, I have to use it, and how am I going to use it? And I need to learn more, I guess, as an activist, that my job is to talk about things I believe in, platform the people I believe in, platform the issues, I mostly just do the behind the scenes work and do it, and then people want to get on board because they see that it works. And so focusing on that and like just doing the work as I go, and not worrying if people believe in the fact that it's going to happen, or if I can do it, or if the way that this is being done is the right way, but just doing the work and not worrying so much what people think about you, I think is actually quite hard in this space, especially when you're merging activism with social media and you're merging activism with like capitalism, which now everyone wants to be like, oh, you're an activist, will you be in our ad? It's very, very hard to separate those two things. So I think, yeah, doing that work and not really worrying about what people are saying, because what ends up happening is you have little support when you have an idea because people go, that's crazy. And then you have huge celebration when you've finished it and people want to get on board anyway. That's kind of how it goes. Yeah.
It's like, where are you now? Where were you at the beginning?
I know, yeah, literally.
Yeah, that's great. That's really, really good answers. And yeah, just even to share, like, sometimes it's not always about, you might have a group of people who just get the struggle, and you may be campaigning for different things, and that's the thing that you're campaigning for may not be the thing that unites you, but it's about, oh, you understand what perseverance looks like, you understand what a no feels like, you understand rejection, and so that is going to strengthen me to keep on going. And so for those, all of you guys who are locked in, you may find your tribe with those who empathize with those emotions, right? So yeah, find your community, find your gang. It's definitely better to do things in groups than alone. And Kiana, over to you, the last word. Who's your tribe? Who's your gang? Who is it you roll with to keep that hope alive?
I'm like Gina. I'm all about female empowerment. Like anything that empowers girls and young women, that's what I'm all about.
Thank you so much, sis, for leading this type of conversation, you know, and all the work that you're doing. I know you're coming back in for the Q&A later on tonight, but Kiana, thank you so much for chopping it up about hopes and ambitions. We're going to move over to Abba now. Abba, over to you, all about personal challenges. This is a fantastic conversation that we need to have. As much as we're talking about hope, we can't just put our head in the sand and think it's all going to be easy. And so thank you so much for your time tonight. Yeah, it's so good to have you on call. And I know that you've got questions for Gina and Ben, so I'm going to hand over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys, so far. Been a brilliant conversation and really, really insightful. So my question is, to both of you, you guys can answer at your peril when you wish. What has been your biggest personal challenge? Is my question.
Ben, you go.
Oh, damn. Can I answer this as openly as I want to? Is it like wide, or do you mean in specific regard to activism?
As open as you want to.
Okay.
Your biggest personal challenge in life.
All right. My biggest personal challenge in life. I feel like the answer that I'm supposed to give is the answer that I'm going to give for a different question. That's what I've decided. And I would say my biggest personal challenge, actually, if I think about it seriously, like, so when I was in university, I had a really weird situation. Like, I'd studied theology for my degree, and I'd grown up like in church, as I said before, going to like a really, really sick youth group. It was so good. Like, it was amazing. Swarzy was there. We were having a great time. We were learning to like do loads of stuff and present and host and do all of this cool stuff. And I decided really young, maybe like about 15, 16, that I was going to be a pastor when I was older. Like, I was like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. I know where I'm going. And I committed to that path, and I decided that I was going to go and study theology at university. So I went to like a private Bible college, a seminary, and I did my degree there. So it was 3 years, and in my third year there, I got kicked out because I had sex and everybody found out, and it was super tense, and I had to come home. I had to tell my parents, which was a horrible experience. And I think if I'm being really, like, I often make light of the situation, but when I really deep it, actually, that was probably the biggest personal challenge I've had in my life, because it rocked me to my core. Like, everything I knew about myself, my whole identity, had been thrown up in the air and was up for grabs, and anybody could take any part of it. Like, I wasn't the person that I thought I was. I wasn't the person other people thought I was. I was suddenly just a random person. And everything that I'd planned for, everything that I'd set in place to, like, this is what I'm going to do, this is who I'm going to be, this is how I'm going to change the world, how I'm going to influence people, was suddenly closed off from me. And I really struggled off of the back of that. I really struggled for a good couple of years, like most of my 20s, with like my mental health. And this was before mental health was a popular conversation. Do you know what I mean? This was 10 years ago. So before it was like on the TV and there were adverts about it and everybody was talking about it in schools. This was when, like, you were going to the toilet at work and breaking down in tears and you thought you were going crazy. Do you know what I mean? Like, you were just like, something's wrong and I don't know what it was. So I think that was probably like one of the hardest periods of my life. And like learning to almost like recreate myself and be a different version of who I was, but still figuring out like who I am and what it is about me that makes me me. If it's not my belief system, or if it's not the friends that I grew up with or the community that I was raised in, then who am I, and what is Ben? Who is Ben? How does he show up in the world? What does he care about? What does he want to do? What does he want to speak about? And that was a really long process. But for me, it always serves as a reminder that like nothing is final. Do you know what I mean? Like, even when you reach the point where you're like, it's over, it's game over, I'm done out here. Like, you still got a chance to like rise from the ashes like a phoenix. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can come back and it can be good, and you can still do things. Like, even when the avenues that you thought you were going to take are closed off, there's still other ways of doing the things that you believe are important and the things that you want to do. So I would say that was probably my biggest personal challenge.
Thank you, Ben.
That was amazing. The honesty in this room, man. I love it.
Isn't it?
This nice, doesn't happen on Zoom often.
Just feel so relaxed.
It's so good. Biggest personal challenge for me, Abba. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it's difficult because you automatically want to go into work and what you do in your job. I think personally and professionally, like the last professionally. I don't make any money from activism. It's not my job really, is it? It's just a big hobby.
I do.
Yeah. The past 3 years and with the campaigning and everything, I think has been the biggest challenge personally, because as a kid and as a young person and growing up, I was always a very open book. Like, I'm very fast and loud and passionate about things, and I was a weird kid. I was never very cool in school. I didn't really have any friends. I was just very like all the time about everything, very passionate, just wanted to do things, and that was never a cool thing. And I always prided myself, I guess, on my openness, my honesty in any given situation. And so when I was thrown into a political world, which is kind of the opposite of that in almost every regard, you know, you'll have a meeting and there will be words said, and then you'll leave and you have to decode what that actually meant, because the words that were said to you weren't necessarily true, because they've talked to this person and then this person's doing this, and you're constantly trying to guess 2 steps ahead of what everyone around you is doing, and you're figuring out, how do I break into this kind of system and figure this thing out and get people to listen to me when they have a million other things on and care about a million other things. And so I've had to play the game for 2 years, and that was publicly and it was also politically. So a lot of stuff would be happening in private that I couldn't talk about in public, because everything in public politicians were watching me say. And so I was trying to retain these relationships. And the reason why our bill and our act was successful so quickly is because we played a very clever political game in keeping every party happy. And so, you know, opposition was happy, the government was happy, they felt respected. We created these relationships with every single party, and that's incredibly hard to do in politics. And so for 2 years, I kind of became a politician. And I think I lost a part of my identity in those 2 years, because I was just my day-to-day actions, because I was working on this from 5 a.m. till 1 a.m. in the morning. I had a full-time job. I was working in advertising, and I was getting up at 5 a.m. working on it, and then I'd be in like a lawyer's office with Ryan until 1, working on it and planning for the next day. And so I think I for 2 years I sort of lost a bit of who I was, kind of the person that I am, because I had to play a role of a bit of a politician in this work. And I found that a really hard thing to then take apart when I'd finished it all, because the whole process of 2 years finished with one old white man going, okay, in the House of Lords. And then it's like all of those learned behaviors and all of those things you've created and that world you've created to try and make this massive thing happen is gone then. And then you're just back to work, and I'm in an office, and yes, my life has changed massively, but I wasn't doing that anymore. And so kind of keeping my identity, I guess, and the person I am and all the things about me that have always been there during such a stressful and difficult task, massive, you know, momentous thing to do on your own. That was the biggest, that was my biggest difficulty. And also keeping my head cool through all the kind of public opinion and online abuse and all that stuff. I think dealing with a lot of people's opinions, whether they're, you know, some guy on my phone who's screaming at me, or a politician who thinks I'm an idiot or whatever, that takes a lot away from you. And I think you have to know who you are and keep people around you who know who you are and knew you before that. And that's to anyone who's doing this work. Like, you could be starting a project now in your community and it will be hard. And so you need a small group of people that will let you talk for 4 hours, that will be there for everything, because when you come out of it, like, you're going to have to go back to your life and then maybe start another project, and you need that support all the time. So that is, I think, the biggest thing, is the people around you as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's so huge, so huge. And it makes the wins sweeter. You know, when you know the adversity you've gone through, it actually makes you think, right, I'm not just double tapping because I like it. I'm bare double tapping because I think actually you actually had to overcome something to then get this done.
Yeah.
You fought for it.
Say again?
You fought for it, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, you fought for it. And so it's a hard-earned win that needs to be recognized. And Abba, before I get into barriers and the barriers that all three of you face, I'd love to know from you as well, coming from the Damilola Taylor Trust, what are some of those challenges that you still find and those barriers that you're still fighting against, that are still up there even 20 years on after Damilola died? What in your world, what's your personal challenge?
Yeah, great question, Swarzy. I think for myself, I spoke about, when I was part of 2020 in the lead up to Damilola Taylor, the two organizations are closely linked as well. And we went into a range of, communities, a lot of, deprived backgrounds in the UK, of individuals that have come, from just a range of backgrounds, but they find themselves in a very I would say, toxic environment where they're not able to thrive as well as they could have. You know, I was fortunate enough to speak to a lot of, we'll call it the top gangsters in the UK, just by chance of being involved with the community. And they'll come up to us and they'll say, we love the work that you're doing. You guys are great, but you know, we can't leave this position right now. And they're saying they've got about 50 people trying to kill them effectively. And so what that showed me was that these people, or a range of individuals, everyone wants the opportunity to thrive, to grow, to build themselves. But again, because of maybe where they were born, or maybe because of certain circumstances, they're not able to escape that, and because the support system is not as robust or as strong enough for that. And I found that that's the biggest challenge sometimes, is to be able to mitigate or be able to address some of those issues with the resources, limited resources that we have, because obviously there's only so much that we can do, and there's only so many people we can reach at a short space of time. And so what happens is you have to pick and choose who to go to, who to support, and what projects to do, to be able to be as effective as possible. And that's quite challenging sometimes, because you're sort of trying to pick and choose who you're going to help, and you want to help everyone, but you can't. And so I think for myself as well, growing up, you know, in certain communities, I've had the opportunity to witness and to see how, even though two people might be brought up or born in a certain circumstance, the decisions that they make can be very different. And, you know, the end goal of those decisions are detrimental to obviously the person that made a bad decision, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad person. And I think that's the challenge as well, is to be able to try and intercept or trying to address those individuals and make negative decisions before it's too late, because effectively they're only making those decisions generally because of the circumstances that they're in, and they feel like they have to do it, not because they want to. So that's a big challenge in many regards for the Damilolo Taylor Trust now, I find, and obviously in the build up to that with 2020 change as well.
Amazing. Abba, thank you. And even in you sharing the challenges, it exposes the ways in which you can still win along the way, because as soon as I know the problem, I can start working on the solution, right? I understand how those two things can come together. And so the work that you guys are doing and all of the campaigns that you're involved in, is about changing lives, and that is happening with the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for leading this session. Thank you so much, Abba. Thank you for your answers, Ben and Gina. I'm going to bring in Sabrina next, and on the same theme, and just moving it into the pandemic, I suppose, but the pandemic barriers. This is a huge conversation that I would love for you, Sabrina, to lead on. So thank you so much for tonight, sis. Thank you for joining us. I know you got questions for the special guest, so handing over to you.
Okay, so my question is, what are you most worried about for young people who've been directly impacted by the pandemic?
Great question. Let me jump in with Gina first.
I'm really worried about job security. I'm really worried about young people getting into the careers and the industries that they love and they want to work in, because I think when I was younger, I had this assumption in my head that like the thing I was good at I should pursue, but actually the thing that you care about and really gets you like stoked is the thing you should pursue.
Yeah.
And the economy and job security and all those things, and like social mobility and getting into the job you want, is already hard. It's already difficult because of a million reasons in terms of education and like socioeconomic background, where you come from, all these different things. So like my worry, like I remember when we saw all these people, young people, like couldn't graduate, or like their graduations moved, and there was so much narrative around that. And for me, it was like, a lot of the narrative was like not empathetic enough. I was like, do you not remember what it was like when you were in uni? Like, I'm not that far off that. Like, graduation is such a huge thing. Uni is such a huge thing for a lot of people. A lot of people don't get to go to uni. A lot of people, that's their dream, to go to uni. And to have that moment is huge. So I just hope that there's a lot of good work happening around that gap between coming out of education and getting into a job that you want to be in when we're dealing with such a destabilizing thing as a pandemic, because it's going to be incredibly hard with the economy. And I hope there's good support systems out there.
Yeah, and empathy.
Yes.
Yeah. This is such a good question. And I guess for me, it's a kind of a similar answer, and slightly different. Like I think the things that I worry about for young people following the pandemic are like what are things that we don't know yet, right? So what are the lasting impacts of this on a generation of people who are growing up through it? And we know that these kinds of things happen every 100 years or so. Like there's a pandemic, or like an epidemic, or a war, or something that forces everybody out of the way that they've always lived life and into something very different for a period of time. So that's nothing new. But I think the way that the world is globally connected at this point in time, and like with the rise of social media and all of that kind of stuff, I think we're dealing with a situation where nobody knows what's happening anyway. So I wonder like what the lasting impacts are going to be on people's mental health, on young people's mental health. What does that look like for them moving into the future? Are we supposed to expect everybody to have like a low level of social anxiety now because they haven't been able to see people or touch people for a year? How do you like reintegrate into society in a normalized way? What does that even look like? Are we ever going back to what it was like before? I don't know. What's the lasting impact of a broken education? Do you know what I mean? Because I think I'm not a huge fan of the education system as is, but I do think that it's important, and I think now having like a massive break in what that was, like, does that stunt people's learning? I don't know. What are the outcomes for kids that have not had access to education for this last however many months? How does that impact their trajectory and their line in life? And also on a really practical level, one of my sisters is a teacher in a school in East London at the moment. And she came for dinner the other day and she was talking about how kids have to have the windows open in their classrooms, but they're not allowed to wear coats while they're in the class. And like yesterday was like the coldest day of the year or something, right? So like to me, I'm like, if I was a kid in school, like now as an adult, I'm like, I wouldn't stand for it. But when you're a kid in school, you can't do that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like there's consequences. So I worry about like people's health, like their physical health. If we're all trying to fight off a pandemic and a cold or a flu, like what does it look like to just have to sit in the cold for 8 hours a day? Like all of those kinds of like practical things are the things that I think about for young people, and I just think, this is not like a very fair situation in comparison to adults who get to work from home. Do you know what I mean? In comparison to those of us who are grown up and able to like do our own thing, like we get to be in, like some of us are in really fortuitous situations where like we're actually, the situation we're in now is better than the situation we were in 6 months ago or 8 months ago. So I worry about like that level of inequality and young people not being able to have a voice to advocate for what it is that they need and they want, because we don't know, like they know, they're the ones that are living through it.
Yeah, great. And a great question, Sabrina. And just to tie this section up, and then I want to plunge into the last one and then Q&A. So shouts to you guys, got your questions in the Q&A function. I see you. Sabrina, for you and the work that you do, what's coming up from young people? What are they most worried about in terms of impacts of the pandemic?
Well, some of them just don't care. In terms of during the pandemic, they felt like nobody cared about them. They were just told to stay at home, or they felt like everyone was blaming them for when COVID, like the R rate was increasing. But also the young people who obviously didn't get to sit exams, and within the education system, it's known that certain students are predicted lower grades because of their socio-economic background. So in terms of like the destinations in which they can go on to, that they feel that's really impacted them. Also, they feel because obviously in Scotland and Wales, where the exams have been cancelled, but in England, they're still having to do exams. If they're currently in year 13, they're not really sure how that's going to pan out, or if they're in year 11. But the other thing is their behaviour. So I feel like everyone's mental health and everyone's behaviour would have been impacted by COVID, whether in a negative or positive way. And I think kind of like what Ben said, when you're an adult, I feel like you can just be who you want to be. But in a school environment, they're told, well, no, you can't do that. So say, for example, maybe a student, they don't really want the mask on. Obviously, you need to wear the mask, but some of the students that I work with, they have special education needs, so they don't necessarily understand to a full extent why it's important they wear it. And if you don't understand something, you're not necessarily going to do it, and they feel like their voices aren't being heard or their individual circumstances aren't being taken into consideration. And I think my main concern is that exclusions rates will increase because behaviour will get worse, and I've seen that already. A particular school that I'm working in at the moment, a student, they swore their teacher because they're getting frustrated and they got excluded for 10 days. And for me, that is shocking, that's alarming. You know, there's been a pandemic, they've just come back to school. Obviously swearing is inappropriate, but if someone swore at a workplace, you wouldn't get fired, you get a disciplinary meeting. So I think a lot of the students, they don't know how to self-regulate normally, but because of the pandemic, that's been made worse. And then if you're being told, okay, you're now excluded, you're at home, it's basically like they're living the pandemic again, because they're being excluded from their peers, they're missing out on their learning. So for me, it's a vicious cycle. And I think things do need to change and improve, because if it doesn't, you know, young people are the future. And if young people don't have hope now, when will they ever have hope? So I think it's really important in terms of how society treats young people, because it impacts a young person's self-esteem and their worth. And there's no point me saying to a young person, like, you can achieve what you want, if, you know, when they leave school, society tells them otherwise. They need to hear that consistent message. A lot of them don't have good role models. A lot of them have negative influences outside of school, where they might be more vulnerable to exploitation, etc. And it's those bad influences which are showing them that attention, which obviously isn't good. So my main concern is how young people are not only affected now, but how they're going to be affected in the long term, in ways in which we can't even foresee.
Yeah. And this is why you, man, and all the people that are part of the connections that you're working in, to have your ear to the ground in terms of schools, you're not just talking out of thin air, you're talking because you know students, you know young people who are going through these things, and it gives you an accurate response to then solving some of the issues at hand. And that is part of hope. That is part of hope, because you're able to be heard and then, you know, reinforce, and not just to say, oh no, this is just happening in schools. You know, Ben's situation with his sister who's a teacher can give an accurate, there are kids who are not wearing school, who aren't wearing coats in school, but got windows open. Like, what is all of that about? And really, I just think young people are going to have a different fire in their belly after this pandemic, because there's so much that's going to be like, no, no, and no, I'm not saying for that. And then all of the changes, it's exciting to see what young people are going to be able to do. And that brings me nicely into the next topic of going forward. So I'm going to invite Abba and Kiana back in, because I would love to get this conversation about going forward and then open it up for Q&A. We haven't got long left, and I'm aware that we got about 11 questions to get round to, so I want to get some good answers from everyone. But Kiana, for this section in terms of going forward, I would love to know, everyone's got their questions, and so Kiana, I would love for you to kick us off, sis. So yeah, hand them over to you.
What advice would you give to your 12-year-old self?
Starting off hard, eh?
Man, if I could go back and talk to a 12-year-old Ben, I would tell him, first of all, to chill out, man. Like, just enjoy being young. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't, like, I was a pretty naive kid, and I like had a pretty stable upbringing. So I was lucky to like be in an environment where I could be dreaming about making cartoons and finding diamonds and stuff, where other kids don't necessarily have those opportunities. But I would definitely say, one of the things that is super important is that kids learn to enjoy being kids, and they're allowed to be young. And I feel like, especially now in this generation, so much pressure to grow up quickly, so much pressure to like engage with material that's like older than the age you should be engaging with, across the board, like regardless of what it is. And I think I would just tell myself to chill out, to enjoy being young, to relax, and also to just like know that stuff will sort itself out. Like, I think there's a lot of pressure at 12, like you start picking your options, do you know what I mean? And that's the beginning of like, oh, I need to decide what my future is going to be and what the rest of my life is going to be like. And if I could have known like how many turns my life would take to get to this point now, I wouldn't have even cared. Like, I would have been like, don't mind, you pick them, whatever, it doesn't matter, like geography, or like do stuff that you enjoy, do you know what I mean? Like pick all arts if that's what you're like, or pick all humanities if you're a geographer, or I don't know, whatever. But I'd have just told myself to chill out a bit when I was a kid. What would you say, Jean?
I'd probably say like all of what you've said, really. Like yeah, not. I thought there was pre-planned options as an adult, and everything seemed like a process that you had to follow to become a successful, effective adult. And actually none of those things are concrete, and none of those things are, and when I say those things, I'm talking about things like, you know, getting the right amount of points to get into this uni, and like doing like all of these things that seem so important at the time. Like, whatever happens, new avenues will open up if you want them to, and if you are passionate about things. And I would also like, I used to worry about things a lot. So I'd worry about, you know, something bad could happen, or I won't do this well enough. And exactly like you said, in terms of the future, you have no idea what's going on. Like my dad used to tell me when I was a kid, like the things that you really want to happen, like some of them may not happen because you won't care about them that much anymore, or you know, life will take you another way. The things you will be doing in 10 years might not happen, and then the things you're worried about may never happen. You have absolutely no idea like what could happen in your life. The only thing you can do is just follow that feeling of what you really love doing, what makes you excited, what makes you feel good, like who makes you feel good. Connect to your gut quickly, follow those things, and you'll be in the place you need to be, hopefully, because you've made the decision based on what you need and what makes you happy, and just based on who you are as a person instead of what other people think you should be doing.
Yeah. Great answer. Thank you so much. But I'm going to hand over to you and just ask for my special guest to keep your answers maybe to a minute or so we can get through as many questions.
Sorry.
Q&A. No, it's good. It's good. I'm just trying to get through as many questions. So, yeah, over to you, Abba.
Yeah, my question is just what steps could everyone take to achieve their goals?
Great.
So what would you say are key steps?
I would say remember that you can educate yourself outside of school, you can educate yourself outside of the very limiting structures that you're in, like everything that is happening right here, like you're on a free Zoom call, like YouTube University, like TED Talks, like Google Digital Academy. There's so many amazing resources, and you can build and skill up in so many different ways quickly and for free. You just have to dig for it.
Yeah, I'm not a very goal-oriented person. Orientated, I don't know how you say the word, but I'm not that type of person. But I would say the best way to do it is to pick your goal, pick the thing that you want to do, and plan backwards. So try and map out, like, if you're going to do that, then what do you need to do at this point? Like, if you're going to get to there, what do you need to do here? And keep going back until you get to the place where you're at, and take the first step. And when you take the first step, you'll figure out stuff that you need to do to be able to take the next step. There is no expectation on you to know every single path, every single step of a journey that's going to take you to your goal. But when you start taking the first steps, like, you figure the rest of the stuff out and the doors open for you. So plan backwards would be my advice.
That's great advice, boy. Real practical advice.
Shout out.
See, I told you guys, bring a notebook, bring your pen and paper for these guys. Sabrina, and then I'm going to go to the Q&A.
And what skills would you say that young people should build?
That's a good question. Gina's not unmuted. I'm like, that is a good question. I would say you can't be, what I've learned over my time working with young people is the most important thing is to not be prescriptive, to not try and tell people what they should do. And I think the youth group that I grew up in, or Swarzy and I grew up in, one of the things that was amazing about that space was, like, whatever it was that you were passionate about, there was a way for you to do that. So whether it was poetry or drama or music or dance or also aesthetically creative things. So if you were like super interested in like PA, or you wanted to be an entrepreneur or whatever, there were like programs and things set up for you to be able to do those things. So I'd say whatever you're passionate about, whatever the thing is that you think, when I'm older, I'd like to do that, learn how to do those things. And if you've got time, also learn how to use Photoshop, because that will save your life in the future. Like, if you can make a good PowerPoint,
That's so
you
true.
can literally rule the world. Like, I'm not lying to you, it's serious. So learn PowerPoint, learn not PowerPoint, learn Photoshop and whatever else you want to do.
That's such a good point. My answer would be learn to listen really well, and not like hear people, but like listen to people. Because I think, especially in this work, when you're really passionate about something, you want to talk about something all the time, and you're like, it can often tilt into, I'm telling you stuff, I want to talk about it all the time. Learn to listen really well and deep. And I would say learn to tell a story as well, like take people with you, because I have a marketing background, and that is basically, how do you tell a story to lots of people? How do you get them to care about it? How do you take them along the process? If you can tell a story well, whether that's an elevator pitch in 1 minute or it's a speech in 30 minutes, you open up minds and hearts. So like, listen, learn how to tell a story, and learn Photoshop, because it's really helpful.
Listen really well, and schools, we're waiting for the Adobe GCSE, please. So when that
Make it free, it's too expensive.
What?
Very true. Okay, we're going to kick off the Q&A. I'm looking at the time and I know Mete's like, Swaz, we got to go. And so some of these questions that have come in, thank you so much for you guys who've got involved on Twitter. Welcome to the event. My name is Swaz. We're going to go through some of these questions and it's for everyone on this chat. So let me start off with Ben first, actually, because Clara's got a question. And thank you so much, Clara, for getting involved. Her question to you is, what are your favorite tools when you're feeling hopeless? To not lose hope and keep campaigning and fighting. I know this is for the panel, but I just wanted to start off with you, Ben, because you gave two sides of the coin. Yes, you're having great conversations and there's wins on some days. And then on a Thursday afternoon, you get into a conversation and an argument with the guys at the bank. So how do you level both things and what are your tools for staying positive?
Man, I would say my tools for staying positive, and what I'd encourage people to do is find the things that you do, no matter how weird they are, no matter how, like what other people think of them, find the things that you like doing and do those things as often as you can. Have regular baths if you've got a bath in your house, like live that dream, because that is great. Like I really like, as I said before, like I grew up liking cartoons and now like I really like manga. So I read loads of comics like all the time. I watch like the weirdest like little basketball commentary videos on YouTube. And like it's all stuff that like in real life I'd be quite embarrassed to tell. Like if somebody could see my YouTube viewing history, I'd feel like a bit of a loser, but also it makes me happy and I do like really important stuff all the time. So learning to like find space to decompress, and I think there are very prescribed ways of doing that, right? Like there are ways that we all believe we're meant to do it. So you're meant to practice self-care and do yoga and go for a run and and that's cool. If you're that type of person, do what you like doing. If you're not that type of person, find the things that work for you and do those things and make sure you make time to like enjoy yourself, because joy is a revolutionary act. It's radical, bro.
Come through, man. Joy, let's go. Thank you so much, Ben. Gina, I'm going to go to you next. Thanks so much to Alex Holmes. I love that surname, Holmes, but yeah, Alex.
I love Alex. I know Alex.
Oh, you might know Alex. Oh, hello, Alex. Gina has been a part of changing Instagram's policy when it comes to race. What did it take, and taking on a global company like Insta as well? Give us your gem, sis.
Yeah, that campaign was really interesting because it was effectively like in the upskirting campaign, Ryan was my ally and like, you know, made my voice bigger in Parliament, and he gave me that platform, I guess, as well. And so it was like paying that forward, like how do I do that for other people? How do I help on a campaign that isn't about me or my community that I don't actually understand, but I can give like the tools, the strategy and the skills, and like put them in someone else's pot and be like, okay, I'm here if you need a help, like this is what maybe we could do. That was really hard because Instagram's a huge global company, and like we're still working on it. We'll be working on it all year. It's a long process. Changing a policy isn't like a light switch. You know, there's a lot of teething problems, and with tech, teething problems go on for 6 months. But it was a lot of conversations. It was a lot of creating, I guess, educating the public on what the issue was, clearly, succinctly from someone who lived it, getting that out, getting as many eyes on it as possible, building a crowd of people who were angry about that, and then metabolizing that into some kind of leverage to then use with a company who have that much power. Like getting someone like the CEO of Instagram to notice you was a hard thing. However much he said to me, like, oh, you could have just DM'd me. No. So it's like, how do you get the public consciousness to recognize an issue? How do you get them to get angry about it? And how do you metabolize that into leverage so that you can start having a conversation with the company? So I guess it was kind of down to that.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you, Alex, as well for your question. Yeah, great question in this conversation as well. Kiana, Meg's got in touch. Shouts goes out to Meg locked in. Meg's asking you, how old were you when you got involved in the work that you're doing, I'm guessing?
I was around 15, 16. That's when I started actively getting involved in Getaway Girls, and that was only just as peer mentorship for like young girls and women. Like I wasn't employed to do it. I wasn't like pushing or campaigning. Like I went to uni, and it was my time at uni when I was like, you know what, I'm actually going to dedicate myself to like start making changes. So it started off very small and when I was younger, but I feel like young people now are like really smashing the game. They're like 13, 14 years old, so you can definitely start younger.
Yeah, Absolutely. Listen, we got to watch for these people, you know, they'll be coming for my job, these 13, 14-year-olds. So it's amazing. It's amazing to see what young people are doing. I'm going to take Alicia's question. Shouts goes out to Alicia Edmond, asking a really great question about long-lasting change. And I want to go to Abba and then to Sabrina as well, given that you were talking about schools and exclusion and young people really being at the heart of education as well. And so here's Alicia's question. For long-lasting change to come about in the lives of young people, quality education, safety in the community, access to the job market, which section of society do you believe can instigate real change? And she's put field change, and I think that's great as well. Real and field change, talking about empathy, both at a grassroots level, government and corporations. So Abba, let me come in and weigh in with you first, bro, because I feel like you got bare stuff to say about this. So essentially, yeah, safety and community. You're talking to people who's like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, bro, and we love what you're doing, but I can't lead this lifestyle because it's sticky right now. And so how do you then create long-lasting change, and who in society is best to instigate that?
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely fantastic question. I think for me, it has to be both. I think government and corporations, I think there needs to be a real merger. I think they need to come together and marry up the resources that they have, because the government, you know, just obviously looking at economically doesn't have all the resources. Corporations need the government to be able to legislate and, you know, pass or give them the power to do certain things. So I think when both do come together and there's a genuine interest, I think that's what really needs to happen. A genuine interest for change, and not just obviously to for their own pockets or for their own benefits. I think that's when things will start to change. But also, I think really tackling at the very bottom level. I think from my experience, you know, growing up in East London, you know, not the greatest of areas. I think that what would have been great for myself, I would have been able to at least have the understanding that there's more opportunities to explore than the traditional routes, as well. I think Gina fantastically said, because sometimes, you know, there's these preconceived ideas that we have, and unless that we have a external view of that, we always make the same decisions. So if I knew, for example, the levels of, or the number of apprenticeships that were open, I may not have gone to university, but then I think now what's happening is that with the pandemic, there's been a lot of changes to how corporations actually operate, and they can actually feed this through to a lot of individuals at bottom level that can start to learn new skills, and they can start to explore new opportunities. For example, coding, programming, and that's just one example. And I know Ben touched on, you know, the creative arts examples as well, maybe dance schools or schools where they be able to go in and learn Photoshops and things of that nature. So I think there needs to be a real merger of both, if I was to leave it there.
Amazing, man. You need to run for PM, just siding that one in. Sabrina, let me come over to you as well. And you were talking about schools, and you know what? I don't want to assume that everyone who's attended this event is a young person, because I've got friends who are like, I'm attending the events that my young people are going just to put my ear to the ground. So let me even assume that there's teachers on this call as well. So if you had the opportunity to share with teachers and share with those who are close to when we're talking about exclusion and what life is like for young people at school, yeah, where does long-lasting change in the context of school, college, uni, for those who are studying?
I think to treat every individual as an individual and get to know their story, get to know their why. So the most common reason why students get excluded from school is because of persistent disruptive behaviour. So that's silly things like shouting in class, throwing things, just being silly. And obviously a teacher's job is to teach. So understandably, they send the student out of lessons, but I can't count the amount of times that a student's been excluded from school for disruptive behaviour, but when I've spoken to them, it's because they actually don't understand the work and they're embarrassed. And because of that, they act up on purpose. Another example is that there was domestic abuse going on at home and they didn't want to be in the lesson because the topic was about something which is triggering them. So I think it's really important that you find out the why behind someone's behaviour, and that's how long-lasting change will come about. And I think the main thing, Gina mentioned it before, you need to listen to a young person. So a young person could be saying to you, I'm having a bad day, and then you could assume, oh yeah, it's because, you know, it's early in the morning. No, that's not what they said. Listen to what they're actually saying. Take the time. Young people know when you're listening, and young people know when you're not listening. And I think if more people took the time to listen to young people, the world would be a different place. The most astonishing thing for me is that when I do feedback, once I've run the program in schools, the young people say their favourite thing is that they've just been able to talk or someone listen to them. And for me, that's concerning. Why is that their favourite thing about the program? That should be something which is a given in society on a day-to-day basis. So people need to listen more. People need to actually not just listen to have a response, but actually listen to understand what the young person is saying. And I think the other thing is we need to understand more about the places in which young people are coming from. I'm from Essex, so if I go and work in a school in Hackney, I don't understand what's going on in Hackney. So first of all, I need to educate myself about what are the issues going on in Hackney which are affecting these young people when they come to school. A lot of the time it's teachers who don't necessarily live in the area working with these students. So we need to do as much work as possible on ourselves so that we can better support young people. And also we need to be consistent with our method. A lot of young people, they will do things to push you away because they think you don't care, or because throughout their life they've been told that nobody cares about them. But if you're consistent, that barrier that they're putting up will be broken down, and then they'll begin to open up with you, and you can build that best rapport, and a rapport is what's going to create a long-lasting change in the end.
Can I get the retweet button on Zoom, please? I can't find it, but I just need to find, I need to find the retweet button. Yes, and amen to that, sis. Thank you so much. Yes, so good. And if there are teachers joined in, thank you for joining in, because yeah, you are closest to the students, right? And for you to listen to students, that's going to be part of the lasting change we're talking about. I'm going to wrap with one last question, but I want to head back to Gina real soon, because I think it's so great to talk about hope and what I want to do and the purpose. And you touched upon, you know, hate online. You got trolls, you got haters trying to hate on you. So for those who are like, yeah, I'm going to start this up, but I know there will be backlash. I know that there will be people who do not agree with me. Someone's asked a really great question, and I wondered if you could just shed light real quick on it. So how do you deal with haters and maintaining self-care? It can be really lonely doing this work, and I'd love to know how you maintain or remain motivated and not feel brought down. So yeah, when you do get the hate, and that's going to happen because not every cause is everyone else's cause, how do you yeah, maintain that self-care and that level?
3 things. First thing is you just basic things, just know your stuff deeply, do the work, be confident in what you're saying, never stop trying to learn about that thing that you're working on, because when you feel confident in that, you more easily deflect. You can more easily recognize silly comments, whether something's an actual criticism or it's just someone who's angry. Really know your stuff and be on that every day. Number 2, surround yourself with people who knew you before you were doing this work. Surround yourself with people that only make you feel great. The friend who doesn't meet up with you, who you kind of want to be friends with because that you knew them 5 years ago and they're kind of cool, and like me and Ben don't really get on that well. No, and but only have those people that you're like, oh, they are alive. They make me feel alive. That's it. Everyone else can be a drink friend. Get rid of them. If it's legal for you to drink. And then number 3 would be to step away from the work. Like, if one of the most useful things I learned was that if you're not going to quit, you have to learn to rest. And often when you are having a tough time or you're getting fatigued, you will go further into it. But no, take time away from it. It's still going to be there when you come back. This is life work. So you have to take time away from it.
Yeah. You know, when you get a 3-point PowerPoint and you're just grateful because you can watch this back. Trust me, Ben, like, yeah, I'm going to reload this one. So I need the retweet button and the reload button for the 2 things that everyone's going on. I've got 5 minutes left, and then I'm told I got to wrap. So I need to, yeah, you see, Mete, I got you before you got me. I would love, in maybe 30 seconds, 30 quick seconds, I want to just hear from everyone to close out tonight. Thank you so much for all the questions, and it kind of fuels into this last one. What is the thing that you can do to remain hopeful? And this can be a barrier that you face that you've overcome, but just a quick 30-second from each of you, just to close tonight, on something that for young people who are locked in tonight, or whoever's locked in, maybe down, maybe feeling positive, but what is something that you can do to remain hopeful? And I'm going to start with Kiana first.
I think you can surround yourself and find the passion that you're interested in. Surround yourself with them people, and lots more opportunities that you really want to get involved in will come to you, and everything you want will start being attracted to you, so you won't even need to work as hard for it.
Let's go. Rub shoulders with them people, man. Find your gang. I love that, Kiana. Thank you so much. Let me go over to Sabrina as well. What can you do to remain hopeful in 2020?
I think remember that everything has a beginning and everything has an end. So if you're not hopeful because lots of negative things happen, know that, you know, there's always a rainbow after a storm. And also some things are meant to make you stronger. They're not meant to destroy you, but it's about how you view that situation and how you let it build upon your character rather than let it define you.
Yeah. Sis, I'm coming for that retweet button, you know, don't worry. The next Zoom, we'll find it. Abba, for yourself, yeah, give us your gem. How can we stay hopeful in 2020?
Yeah, absolutely. I think comparison is the thief of joy. So, I mean, if we
reload it.
Yeah, should I say that again? Comparison is the thief of joy. So I think just staying in our lane, looking forward to, you know, just what we have in our hands, and using it for the benefit of others, I think that will really elicit or bring out hope within us and for other people as well.
Thank you so much. You know, that one actually hit a core. I'm gonna have to apologize to the organizers for making bear noise on this call. Yes, don't let anything steal your joy. Come through. To our special guests, thank you so much. Ben, what would you say? Yeah, how can we remain hopeful in 2020?
I would say one way to remain hopeful is to learn to believe in your source, man. Like really, really believe in your own source. Really, like at times.
Can I just get a clarification on source, please?
Listen, the juice is temporary. The source is forever. It's forever be. But I would say learn to celebrate your own identity on a really serious level. Like learn to look at yourself, and it's something you can practice every day. Wake up, look in the mirror. Like they used to say stuff like this to me when I was a kid, and I didn't take it seriously until about a year ago. But look in the mirror and just tell yourself you love yourself every day, and learn to like enjoy who you are. And that makes it a lot easier to wake up every day and believe that good things are going to happen. I would say that's a good way to be hopeful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And Gina, what would you say, sis?
Yeah, same. I'd say things out loud. You think stuff all the time, say things out loud. I used to stand in Parliament in the toilet opposite a mirror being like, I can do this. I'm good enough. I know what I'm doing. I used to say it to myself, say things out loud. Also, watch Knock Down the House on Netflix. Look at other people doing that stuff. See where they came from. They're just like you. Surround yourself with people doing the same stuff. Watch them and believe that you're exactly the same and do the same thing.
Yeah. I told you guys, it'd be a night of inspo, man. Just too many gems to capture tonight. We need to do part 2. So I'm looking at you guys. We need to do part 2. But for everyone who's locked in, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really hope, no pun intended, but we really do hope that this event has inspired you to go out and really think, yeah, what is it that I want to do? Where can I carry hope? And whose hope that I can, rub shoulders with and get involved with as well. Because believe, man, you have the power to be the change you want to see in the world. I want to say a massive thank you to Abba, to Karina, to Sabrina as well, and our special guests, to Gina and to Ben. Shout goes out to Mete, who's been just so phenomenal behind the scenes, helping me on the chat as well. I've been Swarzy. This has been the first ever, can you believe we're making history even as we're here, the first ever Day of Hope panel event, many more to come. Today is Damilola Taylor's birthday, and we wanted to honor and in his memory talk about hope and how young people can find hope in 2020 despite all of the odds. And so please follow us on the socials, get in touch, and we'll see you guys very, very soon. Thank you so much for tonight. Good night.